I'm Emma Hewlett from Kilmackie Gardens. I'm the chairperson of the Wexford Garden Trail, and I'm going to be interviewing the members of the Garden Trail to find out a little bit about their businesses and their gardens, their garden centres and their parks. Today we are chatting with Kieran Fitzgerald, head gardener at Johnstown Castle and Gardens. Kieran, it's really lovely to see you, and it only seems the other day that you were our head gardener at Kilmackie.
Yeah.
And so it's nearly 5 years now, I think, that you've been at Johnstown. But I want to backpedal a little bit. And your story from the very beginning was you lived in West Waterford and you had Lismore Castle and Gardens on your doorstep. And I think your first gardening job, which started your passion for gardening, was in the Castle Gardens. Is that right?
It is indeed, yeah. My mom's an avid gardener, but I just never really showed any interest. It was just weeding. But it wasn't until I went to Lismore Castle itself as a summer job. I was like, wow, I can get paid for this. And then suddenly it was just all the old traditional techniques of gardening and everything. And plus it's a stunning location. It just really fueled the passion and kind of led on from there then.
Oh, that's fantastic. But I mean, it's a huge space, isn't it? I mean, what is the size of the space that you're working in?
It's 120 acres in total. We've 50 acres of woodland. We've 3 lakes totaling nearly 14 acres in size, which we have to treat as well for algae and other kind of invasive pond weeds. Then we've created 9 acres of native hay meadow, 6 acres of rough grassland, and roughly another 8 acres then of lawn on top of that again. And then we've a 4 acre wall garden, which is currently under restoration, and we've just recently restored the sunken garden.
So, shall we start with looking at some of the restoration projects that you've been doing? And I think the glass house is one which has been done over the last sort of 18 months.
Yeah, so since the Irish Heritage Trust took over there about 5 years ago, they've put an awful lot of money and needed money into the buildings as well as just the grounds. And with the help of Chagas as well with funding, we've recently restored both our Richardson glasshouses in the wall garden. The small glasshouse is only just finished this year, and the larger one was done last year. So they're fairly sizable greenhouses as they go. We've the frame and all the walls done. A little bit of work still left to do in the flooring, but for the first time in like years and years, the public are allowed back into the glasshouse again. That has been made safe and returned. We've actually returned an awful lot of the original features that had been lost over the years, such as sunken beds, some of the specific vents as well in the greenhouse itself. So it's been a real kind of passion project, but also we've discovered an awful lot in terms of how the glasshouse used to work in the past just by exploring stuff. But yeah, a lot of barrowing and stuff because obviously we were restricted with the size of the doors, so everything was done by hand. So it was
My
a lot of
goodness.
work, but thankfully we didn't have to do the frame itself. That went to a joinery company in New Ross.
Oh, wonderful. And what do you have in the glass houses?
So the main glass house itself, it's divided into 4 rooms. So we have our new propagation room in one end. Beside that, we will eventually restore the original propagation bench there, and that'll be turned into a cactus succulent room, but also an information sort of room, just with interpretive boards exploring the history of the glass house. The room that's currently open to the public, it's our centre room, so we call it our temperate room. So it has a nod to a lot of the plants that would have been grown there in the past. As Johnstown was the first place in Wexford to grow an edible banana, we have some ensetas, which are dwarf bananas from South Africa. Just as a nod to that, we unfortunately can't grow the original bananas because they would be about twice the height of the glasshouse itself.
Mm.
But the sunken beds there, they're one of the original features were restored. And then the room off of that, the fourth room, that will eventually be our vinery. And again, there's an awful lot of restoration work done there, particularly in the walls where there was 14 red brick archways that had been blocked up in the past, but they've now been fully restored. And we hope to plant grapes back through there in kind of next kind of year or two. We found the original variety of grape as well. So it'll be nice to kind of have that back in there again in the glasshouse.
You have a great design for a new design for the wall garden, which you've started already.
Yes, it's a work in progress. It's quite a large project. We brought in the help of a conservationist first, just to see what we could and couldn't touch in the wall garden. Because the wall garden itself isn't actually the original wall garden. The original one was about a half a kilometre on the other side of the estate. But during the redesign by Daniel Robertson in the mid 1840s, it was deconstructed and built where it currently is now. And then the second half of the wall garden was added on in the early 1850s. And as I mentioned before, the glasshouse we currently have isn't the original glasshouse. So even with that, that was an add-on. Then the pathway system that used to be there when I started came later again, which was slightly irritating because the pathway was made in line with the current glasshouse rather than the original feature. So some you'll notice with some of the side doors, the pathway's like a foot to the left. And I was like, it's just those little details. But so with that, it allowed us a lot of freedom because in the auction in 1945, when the castle was handed over, say we lost an awful lot of records. We've none of the original designs, none of the plant lists, anything for the wall garden. So it kind of left me with a bit of a blank slate. So what I did was I monitored people's activities for the first year of working there and just saw what they did. And I noticed an awful lot of people came in the gate, walked straight up in a line to the top of the steps, took a photo, walked straight back out the same pathway. So in my new design, what I wanted to do was I wanted to slow people down and make them kind of live the experience and actually just be aware of their location. So we've removed the original central access pathway and just flooded it with prairie plants. And we've split the pathway in two. So it almost forces people to go up one side. And because they've gone up one side of the wall garden, they're more inclined to come down the other and then hence seeing the whole thing. With the garden itself, we're 2 years into the project, and this year should hopefully all going to plan be our final year of it, and it'll see between 12 and 13,000 plants go into the herbaceous border, all grown on site by ourselves, organically and peat free. So it's a big undertaking, but by doing all the work, both the construction of it as well as the growing ourselves, it saved us a lot of money. So if we were just, for instance, it's about 5,000 it's costing us to grow the plants. But if we were to buy that quantity of plants in the garden centre, you're probably talking about 120,000. That's not including then the landscaping on top of that. So it's quite a large project for us, but it's a fun one. It's always fun when you can get a digger in. So
Yeah,
yeah,
oh, absolutely. And it's Marty that you have as your propagation expert, isn't that
yeah, it
right?
is indeed.
Yeah, so Marty was also working for us at Kilmackie. So we know Marty well. And I mean, his passion really is in that area, isn't it?
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah, very much so. And he's just been fantastic addition to the team. And yeah, we kind of I just let him to it. I dump an awful lot of like plans and ideas and kind of like here try that. And in fairness to him, the vast majority of the time, like comes out on top. Like he's
mhm.
been a great addition, particularly with like those sort of projects on site. Yeah,
And you've touched a little bit on the history, and I know that really interests you.
yeah.
And so that there must be quite a lot of study that you're doing to try and unearth more of the history.
Very much so. It's kind of, I think my bosses always panic when they hear that I'm getting a digger in for a project because it's been the running joke that so far every single time we've had to hire a digger to do something on site, I've discovered something new. So we discovered quite a large extension of our statue wall, which we didn't know was ever built. It was drawn on a map, but there was no evidence of it there. So I unearthed that there about 4 years ago, but we started doing a bit more work on that, just excavating it out under the supervision again of a conservationist. Last year, I've discovered a well, the foundations to a tower, foundations to the original glass house, which is the first physical evidence we've ever had of the original glass house. Up until this point, it was just one photo. So that was quite nice. We found tunnels, we found waterways, underground waterways that didn't know existed. It's just you name it, we found it. So it's always kind of I find it really interesting, and it kind of something that we always say in the garden is there's always more questions than answers. Like every time we find something, it's just like what's that about? Our best one was when we were cleaning the wall on the lake there about 2 years ago on the kayaks. There's been these two little square holes in the bottom. They've been bugging me since I started as to what they were for. And I thought it was for drawing in fish because it's underneath a fishing tower. So I climbed in through the hole, and then we discovered these two huge underground hidden rooms behind the wall that no one knew existed or not on any kind of land survey or any registry or anything that doesn't show up anywhere. So that was kind of one of my favorite discoveries was the underground secret rooms.
Wow.
Yeah, so there's
Uh,
always something.
I mean, it sounds as if you're in completely the right job,
Uh,
and I can imagine that you go to bed dreaming of it and
yeah.
wake up with inspiration. Um, Perhaps we might finish by just giving the listeners how can when can they get in to see you? What are your opening times?
So we're open year round. We close for I think it's 2 or 3 days over Christmas, and that's about it. Really, we're 365 almost. Our times vary depending on the season, but it's usually in around 9 till between 4:30 and 5:30, depending on the time of year.
Mm.
But all that information is on the Irish Heritage Trust website, but also on Johnstown Castle's website.
Yeah, oh,
Yeah,
that's fantastic. Well, thank you very much, Kieran. Thank you very
yeah,
much for coming in. It's been, um, well, I've learned an awful
yeah.
lot. And the very best of luck with the year and the season.
Perfect. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.